flight 6 to 1090. 19 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant, check.
Police, open the door! Open the door! Open the door! Toss your hand! Toss your hand!
Let me go!
Picked up another felony.
Pretty cool heading back to Topeka. How do you feel about going back and seeing everybody?
I'm excited to go.
Meeting Dave.
I'm excited to meet Dave. I'm excited to go to Taco Casa and eat.
It's Taco Owl's now.
Or Taco Owl, whatever. Well, you know, this is probably just the first suitcase because we each get 2 suitcases, so.
Oh, great. So more boots for me to carry. More
Yep.
purses.
Yep.
I think you just like watching me struggle to carry stuff.
Oh, wait, I have to get something.
Okay. I gotta make room for your boots.
Okay, so we have to pack this. Remember this?
Ah, unfuckable.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
gotta pack that.
The prison loved me in that shirt.
I'm
The
sure.
sergeant was asking where he could purchase one, and he didn't even know what it meant.
The Chris Martin story. That's what you write him back and tell him.
I better make room for you here. What's up, guys? Good morning. A new addition, we have our grandson, Kason, who's showing off his new eating skills.
Do you guys want orange juice?
Yeah.
You done with us, baby?
Oh, that's a good boy.
What in the heck did you
Last one.
make?
I made a sandwich.
A banana?
A banana peanut butter pancake sandwich. Y'all staring at me.
It's nice to be able to sit down at a table and eat with my family. It's definitely a contrast from the way I grew up as a kid. From the beginning, it was pretty rough. I was born in Virginia in 1975. My parents were pretty young. They split before I really remember anything. My stepdad, Max, came into the picture then. They met and put me in a backpack, and we ended up traveling across the country where we ended up in Topeka, Kansas. And that's where my story begins.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, good morning. Please be seated in zones E and S.
I grew up in this area. This overpass is the I-70, and we ran the streets right here. This was just like our little block, our little neighborhood.
His girlfriend at the time in middle school was my best friend. We spent a lot of time together just because usually the 3 of us would hang out, and we just spent a lot of time together at school as well. You know, he set a good example for people because he would stick up for other people if somebody was saying something mean to another kid. And he was just really kind of protective about people. And it was clear, you know, how loyal he was to his friends and siblings as well. I never did meet Chris's parents. They weren't that involved in the school. They weren't active in our activities. So we never saw his parents come to school events or come watch him play sports. And it was kind of a known in our circle that his parents weren't nice people, and so they didn't want company over, and we didn't really want to be around that, you know, that environment, I guess I should say.
About 9 years old is when the trouble started. My stepdad was a drinker, my mom was a drug addict, and it was a terrible combo. My role in the family as oldest is either to defend my mom or don't defend the children. Well, I end up taking on both roles because it's human, it's what we do. As I defend my mom, it was tag team. Stepdad would jump in and, oh, you want to get in our business? Or mom would turn that role. So I tried to avoid that situation just by taking care of the kids. I'm the oldest of 8. The physical side, I was kind of the warrior on that. I took most of it. I learned really quickly. I didn't want to get hit by either one of them, so I ran away. I would run away from home. This was kind of my safe haven. Al, the owner, would give me a soda and a burrito until either the police would come down or my stepdad would come pick me up. This park used to kind of give me some sense of safety. He would always try to chase me down here. Thank God I was fast and he couldn't catch me. I've slept underneath that table. Looks like other people sleep here now too. And my mom actually was running a bar that was next to Taco Casa. She met a guy named Mike. And Mike was our hero. He came to save us from the beating and the violence. And in all actuality, he became the worst offender of both. The house on Park Lane really sticks out in my head because of how bad the violence really got. My stepdad Mike had hit my mom with a full beer, knocked her unconscious, broke her fingers with his hands, and when she came to, got grabbed by the throat and picked up. I snuck into the kitchen, I grabbed the knife, and I stabbed him. It's the only way I could get him off of her. That window, second story window by the fireplace, I jumped out of, and that's where I hurt both my ankles running away the last time I lived here.
I could never forget the night that he came to my house. At the time when this occurred, I was 13 years old. This was not the first time that Chris had run away from his home because of abuse and things going on at his home, but this time was profoundly different. To see the injuries that were on him, he was bleeding. He had, bruises on his face, like he was already swollen. He had like cuts and stuff from fighting. I didn't want him going back home. I knew he needed to be protected, and I know that he kept, every time he would run away from the abuse, he would always go back. And I knew he would always go back because he felt the responsibility for his siblings. And, I honor him for that. I think that's very honorable. But also at the time, he was just a kid too. And he didn't have anybody looking out for him. He didn't have anybody protecting him. I involved my dad in that situation. So I got my dad, and my dad's a pastor. And I knew he would know what to do. When the police were there, I remember very vividly that Chris had to take off his shirt to show all of his wounds to the officers. And they were taking pictures, and they had their flashlight out to shine on those injuries, to take good pictures of them. And I just remember how devastating that felt, watching him be that vulnerable for us, in front of us. But then there was also bite marks. That was the thing that scared me, I think, after he took off his shirt. He had bite marks on his chest and back. It was obvious that he had reached kind of a breaking point in this situation that he was in with his mom and stepdad at the time. But he knew being there, and after my dad started talking with him about, his circumstances, that this was going to be different. This wasn't going to be just like any other night where he ran away and got taken back home. We knew that by him agreeing to involve the police in the situation and show them all the scars and the injuries that he had that night, that his life was going to change. And we knew that meant he was going to be placed in the foster care system. Saying goodbye to him that night was scary because I didn't know if I would ever see him again.
We're going to be heading over to the emergency shelter. In this shelter I was at, I think 13 times the first year I was here. And it's probably one of the single most scary places I've lived, other than getting hit on at my house. So you had guys on the left side of the building upstairs and women or girls on the right side. It was integrated, so there was always things happening that shouldn't be. This is where an attempted rape almost happened, and I learned how to defend myself at a very, very young age. First time I ever fought for my life. I had to choose the lesser of two evils. I really did. And you know you're gonna get beat up at mom's. You run your odds at the group home. I can fight back there. That's peers. And that's how I looked at it. That's really honestly how I walked into it. I just kind of took it into my own hands and became a violent person. I got angry and I would lash out and fight and just, do whatever I could do to keep people away from me that were gonna continue to hurt me. I jumped right off that porch and took off running. It's pretty bad when you're less afraid to live on the street than you are to live in a boys' home, in a shelter, or at your own house. I was willing to risk it. Thank God. I went through a total of 42 placements from the time I was 9 till the time I was 18. Placements back then were dime a dozen. They seemed to move you quickly because of the rotations in the bed space, the reclassifications of your level of security, if you commit a crime. There's lots of variables that change or decide whether you get moved or not. I didn't meet my social worker until probably my 10th placement. So how do they know me and my needs? By reading it from a police report. Because last time I checked, I had fingernails broken off in my face and bite marks on my body from my mother, not the other way around, although I was treated as if I were a felon and a guy that needed to be locked up in a placement with lots of structure. I cared more about, do I get breakfast tomorrow? Am I gonna have food to eat? Is there gonna be clothing to wear? Am I gonna have a roof over my head? Because sleeping on bleachers at high schools is scary stuff at 13, 14 years old. Good catch.
Ew, you're way too
What are you doing, babe?
Get him,
I got him. He's covered. He's covered. Look at that defense. Oh. Oh, the blitz is on.
Come over here.
Go get him, Sarge. Cover 2 defense. There's one positive that came from my childhood. It would be sports. I turned out to be a pretty good athlete. I played football and baseball, but because of all the placements, I went to 8 different high schools and didn't get to excel. But one of those schools was Highland Park, and that's where I met my first guardian angel, Coach Ken Kaywood.
I've won my share of games in the past, and a lot of my friends told me not to come to Highland Park. They said, it will not work. It won't work. But I'm not that way. I don't judge what I'm doing. If I was being judged right now by what I'm doing with wins and losses, then I would be a failure.
Coach probably had the biggest heart of anybody that I ever knew. He'd had a lot of success at other schools that he'd taught at, I think including Fort Scott, Kansas. And Kenny didn't have to take that job at Highland Park High School. He knew it was a tough job, but he took that challenge and turned that program into one of the best in the state. And he made the kids believe that there were no limits to what they could accomplish. And that sort of attitude certainly wasn't shown by others at that school, but Ken believed that those kids could do anything that they set their hearts to.
This is the practice field. This is where we did 2-a-days here at Highland Park. So when Hell Week starts, this is where lots of sweat, tears, and vomit was exerted on this field. This is where I met Coach Kaywood. This is where Kaywood told me that I would never start. And this is where I told him, watch me. Yes, I will. Coach was an amazing man, but he was tough on me. He wanted me to earn and prove my position on the team. He came and picked me up from the group home and would have me work out in his backyard, running the gauntlet, throwing the tire swings, doing any kind of workouts I could do just to get better and to get away from the group home. When we found out he was sick, my baseball coach called a meeting. We all came to Coach's house and Coach was in bed. Yeah, we hadn't seen him in about 6 weeks, and he was a shell of a man laying in his bed. We grabbed arms, and I could feel cancer. I could feel death. I felt, right then, that was my first recognition of ooh, this disease is nasty. He pulled me down, he whispered in my ear, he said, "You're gonna start tonight, son." I went out that night with the team, I threw 4 touchdowns, I ran 2, and as I was coming off the field after my first touchdown, my mom was in the stands. First time ever. And after I threw the touchdown, it was just kind of like, whoa, there's Mom. We are headed to Coach Ken Kaywood, my football coach's gravesite. I wasn't allowed to come see this gravesite when Coach died my senior year because I was in the boys' home, and they don't allow you to attend funerals or anything like that. Found him. Coach. Coach of the year, 91-92. To your wife, daughters, family, friends, and athletes, your life was a symbol of dedication, determination, faith, love, and courage. Be strong and courageous. Unbeknownst to me, Coach had wrote my mom a letter. When I went to tell my mom that Coach had passed, Mom's the one who broke out the letter and showed me, hey, he's why I was there. And when I read the letter, he sure enough, he told her, if it's the last thing you do, go see your boy throw a ball. That's heavy. I know today that the reason I've done what I've done and come where I've come is because of guys like Coach. It's nice to be able to come back and tell him thank you. Huh.
Okay.
I never got to come here. I never even got to go see him.
I can't think of anybody in the community that's had a crossword to say about Coach Kaywood. He touched a lot of lives and touched them in a very positive way because of the positive outlook that he had on life.
Mr. Dave.
I was waiting for the limo to pick me up. And you never showed up.
How are you? Good to see you. How have
Uh,
you been?
Oh my goodness gracious!
At least it's not the Sentra. A little
It
bigger.
was a good little car, you know.
Come in,
Not
come
the Maxima,
in.
the Maxima, rest in peace.
You gotta meet Andy.
Come here, you.
This is
I
Andy.
finally got to meet you. How are you?
I'm good.
Welcome to Oz.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I knew you were coming, so
They greeted me.
there you are. Yeah.
Dave came into my life about my sophomore year of high school. At the time, I thought he was just this nosy guy that worked for the state that wanted to be in my business, you know. I wasn't in the market for friends as a 16-year-old kid in a group home. And this guy sent me the worst blonde jokes you've ever heard in a letter as his introduction, which really gave me a poor opinion of his comedy anyway. So once I got through the letters, he showed up at our group home, and he was the shortest Mexican version of Danny DeVito you've ever seen. So it just kind of compiled on my ability to push him away. It didn't faze him. He wouldn't go away. He kept coming back, and he kept explaining to me what his role as a CASA worker really was.
Well, CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. CASA is kind of like, we're kind of like that voice for the child that unfortunately didn't get heard all the time, either through the caseworker or to their attorney or to the courts. These are youngsters that had basically been severely physically abused, sexually abused, emotionally abused. They had been abandoned, a number of criteria, just all sorts of name the abuse that's happened to them. And there was a need to go forward in helping the justice system because it's so overwhelmed. My first impression of Chris was very social person, very polite, but just like another everyday teenager. I think he was my third case that was appointed, and the reason they asked me to do it was at that time he was in Pittsburgh, Kansas.
Well, he was pretty much of a, wild hare when David got him, when it was assigned to him, as he kind of indicated there. Nice kid, you could see the potential in him. And David, stuck with him and was there for him. And that's what makes the difference with the kids. He could count on Dave, and he couldn't count on anybody else, but he could count on Dave. That was a special relationship that they had.
To me personally, I felt some of these homes that he had been in were just there to house him. That was it. He just wasn't developing, in those settings. There wasn't that connection. There wasn't anyone that was connecting with Chris, to get him routed to those arenas that could help him develop, to help him become the individual that he was meant to be. And it didn't happen until he ended up in Pittsburgh. And then, boom, it all happened. I mean, everything positive started going his way. Positive interactions with his peers, positive interactions with his teachers, excelling in sports. I mean, sure, like any other teenager, there's going to be discipline issues, but he went by the book.
He showed me compassion. He showed me trust and honor, things I knew nothing about. Dave would sit in the stands and watch every football game and every baseball game, writing down every stat, sending it to every D1 and D2 college and JUCO around me, just to get someone to show, hey, this group home kid's got a little talent. And that's the kind of guy Dave was. So for me, that was the influence, that was the father figure I had, was Dave.
I think that the time that I knew that Chris was going to be important in my life, and I hopefully it was important to his life, was the day that they brought him up from Pittsburgh. There was no announcement, it just happened. L Makers called me and they said, they're taking Chris to Topeka today. I went, what? I called his social worker and I said, why are you doing this? They didn't even give him a chance to say goodbye to his friends. They just came and got him. And so I found out where he was, and I'll never forget that night. It was just the worst night. And I went in there, got to see him, and Chris was spread out on the couch, just sitting there, arm over his eyes, and I pulled up a chair, and I just started talking to him, and I could tell he was really upset. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'm not gonna leave you. We'll work something out. You cannot let this get to you. You've got two choices, be sad and miserable, or you can go forward. And I can promise you, if you go forward, I'll be there with you. And I said, give me your hand. I'm going to be there for you. At that point, I knew I cannot let this guy down. I'm not going to let him down. I'm going to do what it takes. And I was just like, don't mess with this kid anymore. Once he came back, just more challenges.
So this is Jeff's gravesite. Got shot over an ounce of weed 5 times. That's how bad the violence was here back then. The gangs were so bad. I mean, you didn't go anywhere without carrying a gun, or somebody had a gun. This was one of the 8 murders and funerals that we attended my senior year. It's good to see you.
So Chris, if you could go back and talk to young Chris, who was sitting on the roof of his house contemplating life, what would you say to him?
Joke. Sorry. That's a tough one. Don't quit. Damn, that's tough. Never even thought about that. I was a lot tougher as a kid. I know that. So he'd probably give me advice. he'd probably tell me, suck it up. You made it through the hard part. Really, I'd just tell him, you're going to be all right. You're going to make it. Man, that's a good question. Whew. Keep your head up. Go forward. Don't quit. I mean, all of it. I don't even know. I'd probably hug him and run away with him. You know, that's probably what I do now. Try to prevent all of it. You know, that's a tough one. That's a good question.
He's a survivor. Chris has always been a survivor. He won't give up. He refuses to give up. And there are things I'm sure I don't know that happened to him before I came along that are still within him. But what I've learned about him, he won't give up. And I really admire that in him.
Finally turned 18. I was kicked out of the system. Dave knew if I had any chance of making it, I was going to have to leave Topeka. So he bought me a plane ticket to Arizona to try to reconnect with some family. But with the way things have it, history repeated itself and it didn't work out. Shocker, right? With my family. Next thing you know, I end up in Prescott, Arizona in a snowstorm pitching an 8-pitch tryout for Yavapai Community College. Man, this place is neat to be back here. We used to go up on where the picnic table is up in center field, and the whole stadium would be full with the guys from the dorms, the girls from the dorms. It's neat to be here and see the national champions up there on the sign, though. That's a humbling feeling to know that you were even thought about to be on this team. So I felt like life had finally made a change in direction for me. 3 months later, I was in prison for cannabis. Didn't see that one coming.
When I first met Chris, I went to a party, a college party, with some of my girlfriends from high school. We were not supposed to be there. I was hanging out with them when I saw Chris. I didn't know what he was doing. I just looked over, saw him, didn't think anything of it, and then he came outside and he kept talking to us. And I honestly, I always thought Chris was the most handsome guy, but he to me was a player, so I kept trying to hook him up with my friend. And he didn't like that. I could tell. He would call me after or find a reason to call my best friend Kim and, hey, is Andy hanging out, or can you guys come to the dorms? And so from there we kind of just became friends. He found out at the party I was not even supposed to be at a college party, but we stayed friends. He became friends with my family and it just went from there.
First time I saw Andy, I knew she was the one. Had I known she was illegal, it might have changed how public I was about those feelings, but in all seriousness, I've known since that day and every day since then. She'll tell you every time she would come around, even if it had been 2 years, I would drop everything I was doing. Anyone I was doing. Literally, I would leave them where they were and I would go pick her up or I would go see her. I just had to convince her that she was the one. Mare Pie Hall. This is where it all started. This is where I came to play baseball. This is where I landed in Prescott when I got recruited. It was pretty crazy for me to land here because coming from Topeka, where it's very ghetto and very bad neighborhoods, you live your life that way in foster homes and group homes. And then you come out here in white suburbia, Prescott, Arizona, and I'm living in a dorm with a bunch of rich kids who have no idea the struggle or the life that we lived or went through. Not having a family to support you while you're in college is a tough deal. I thought I could do it on my own, and I had no money, I had no job, I had no way to even buy shoes. You know, a couple months in, I've had to find a way to take care of myself, and coming from the streets and coming from my background, it was back to the drug scene. So I met a guy that had some weed, and the rest was history. I got caught with a joint in my dorm room. They raided my dorm thinking I was selling pot, which I was, but they didn't pull the mirror out and check the drywall for the 11 pounds I had hidden. They actually found the one personal joint I had in the top drawer. And I got 3 years for it. I got charged with the possession of a dangerous drug in a drug-free school zone, and they gave me 3 years because the judge saw I grew up in group homes. He was like, likely suspect. We're gonna make an example, show you what we do to Kansas boys that come out here and mess up our city. And I got 3 years in prison for it. Lost my scholarship, never got to play one game on the field. And that was the end of my tenure at Yavapai College. 3-year sentence, I did 2.5 years, and I believe it was from 96 to 98, 95, 98, in that realm. I did 2.5 on a 3, but I did a year in county before that I didn't get credit for. They didn't give me any time served, just to prove a point, I guess. So total almost 4 years on that sentence, plus the court time, and then parole on the way out.
I got married when I was 18 years old to somebody who didn't live in Arizona. I got married for the wrong reasons, and I'm surprised he didn't say something at the wedding. But my mother was there, and he did know my mom and dad, and he knew how they were, so I think that was a big deal. That played a role in why he didn't say anything.
What's in your pocket?
I noticed there's no black ones in here. Give them up.
What's in your pocket?
Give them up.
Don't have
Give them up.
It's my phone.
Give them up. I saw you put them in there.
Bubba?
Don't deal Bubba in. He's already got cards.
These are good cards.
I'll send it back to you, Christopher, because you like green.
I got a lot of green.
Dad doesn't like green.
I don't like green either.
Oh, damn. Red.
And then I'm gonna make whoever's after me draw two, too.
Christopher.
Yellow?
Blue.
Oh, blue.
Yellow.
I ended up getting divorced, and I moved back to Arizona with a friend of mine. And once I got settled in her place with my kids, I had 2 kids at the time. They were both very little. I wanted to reach out to Chris. And I went to my grandmother's, and she said, "Hey, Chris called." And I just stopped, and I was like, "Chris, Martin called?" She goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "Your house?" She goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, how did you get your number?" I sat with her for a minute talking about how I think Chris is more than my best friend. It's always been something. There's always been a reason why. It's always been Chris. And she agreed and said, "You should call him." I told him that I wanted to bring him home. That's all I wanted. Like, will you just come home? My every single intention was to be with him, to bring him home, and us to be a family and stop wasting time. I got him a plane ticket, and I remember telling him, "You better get on that plane." When his flight came off, he was not getting off. There was so many people. I'm like, "Where's Chris? Where's Chris?" And then there he was, just like I remembered him.
Make a video for you?
Trust me, he's good at it. That's a howdy hi.
How's it going?
Hey, Charlie Brown, you look at me. Yeah, you look at me. Wait a minute, who's this over here? That's the Bubba. That's the Bubba. Look at that haircut. What a guy. You're too cool.
My first memory of Chris, I was just coming back to Arizona, and my sister and Chris were staying at my mom's house, and I was staying there too. And so I knew that him and Andy had known each other when they were younger, but I never had met him in those days, so I'd heard the stories. I liked Chris. He can talk to anybody. Back then he was a chef. I liked it. We lived together. I got good food every night.
Hey, babe.
Hi, Mama.
How does it feel? I watch TV.
This is the best part of my day. Do you remember back when we were young? And I used to try to talk you into running away with me. And I told you that I loved you and I'd always take care of you.
And I told you my mom would kill me if I ran away with you.
Well, at least I kept my word.
You did.
There's a funny story about our wedding. I had to wait until 11/11/11 to get married because that's his favorite number is 11. It's a number thing, 11/11. And so we did not get married till 10 years after all of this because we wanted that date. So I laugh when I hear others say, oh, we've been together 4 years. If he doesn't marry me, I'm leaving. I'm like, yeah, try 10. Yeah, I made him. So that's our funny marriage story. We've been together forever, but we waited till 11/11/11.
I was the president of the Desert Eagles Motorcycle Club. I was a member of the club for almost 3 years. I worked my rank from prospect to president in a matter of under a year. That happened mainly because of who I am. I mean, one, I'm a no bullshit guy. I know how to run a program of brothers. Yeah, we really took pride in this clubhouse. We utilize this not only for us, but for business purposes and for our families. This gave us a great way for us to have a location to go hang out. In the back area over here, we had a dunk a prospect tank. We did Olympics for the kids. We did spoon races, water balloon fights, concerts, MS runs, cancer fundraisers, you name it. Anything we could do publicly here, we did it.
So when Chris first joined the motorcycle club, I was nervous. Chris was raised with them, or his dad was into them. I didn't know too much besides what you see on TV, which is Hollywood, and they shoot people, they're mean, they are not nice to women, you know, all the stuff you see in here. And so that was my first thing is, oh no, but he made sure it's a family club. It's not about that, it's about family, and we want to do right in the community and show that we're trying to be different than what people automatically think. So it was a new club, it was a newer club, so I knew like he's coming in, they need him. They see who he is and how he is, and they all wanted him. And I think they all knew that too. He's just a leader. You can just tell that's who he is. He's a leader.
I think Chris could have avoided a lot of situation if he hadn't got so involved with the motorcycle situation, and then to the point where he was the president. The majority of people in Prescott Valley looking upon motorcycle clubs basically didn't approve of them. I think even if he'd have been just a low-life member in that club, I don't think they would have looked at him that heavy, but he was the one dealing out the rules and regulations.
Motorcycles are not what you see in the movies, the clubs, the gangs, the patches, the color. It's not. If me as a president walked down the street firing pistols, I wouldn't have been in my chair very long. It's all Hollywood. That's what sells. There were other motorcycle clubs in the Prescott area, but the only one we ever had problems with was the Iron Brotherhood.
A police chief in Prescott Valley who was the president of what he called his brotherhood. It was basically police members from Prescott Valley, Chino, the sheriff's departments, 2 or 3 officers from Phoenix metropolitan area, that they started their own little biker thing. Unfortunately, it shows how, if not watched, how a culture can start. And I think in that police chief situation, he had started a culture that got carried away.
In 2007, I was diagnosed with Crohn's. I had always medicated with cannabis and not realized that's what I was doing. I knew it made me feel better. I knew that when I ate it, my stomach responded, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together as medicine or treatment for Crohn's. We got more familiar in Arizona with the medical and the law that was coming down the pipe. We really wanted to be involved. So we applied to get our license to grow in 2010 when our AMMA law passed. We were awarded 2 grow licenses, which allowed us the right to grow 12 plants each. Once we harvested over 20 pounds of flower, I realized I was going to have a real hard time smoking all that before the next harvest. So we turned it into food. That's where Sanka was born. We decided that we would start with a line of candy bars. Candy and chocolate are really good carriers. Easy to hide any bad aftertaste. And it's easy to implement for children, elderly, people with eating disorders. So we launched with 6 flavor candy bars, which quickly grew to suckers, brownies, moon pies, Rice Krispie treats, cookies. Any way we could offer it, I tried it. I mean, coming from the kitchen, if someone says, hey, can you do this? I didn't say no. So we utilized the 20 plus pounds in excess to fulfill all of these Zonka candies and orders. I didn't have any clue that I would grow that much pot with that many plants. I mean, I have an idea that you can get, anywhere from a quarter pound to a pound per light, depending on strain and space. But I didn't realize that the catch-22 was you're only allowed 2.5 ounces of completed finished product. And the way they word everything is the catch. One judge reads it as, oh no, finished product means flower. Other judge reads finished product as not out of the ground yet. So it really is all subject to interpretation.
Before the state started issuing licenses for dispensaries to operate, some of the entrepreneurs and pioneers of the medical marijuana program developed compassion clubs, which were sort of unregulated, unauthorized clubs where people who had gotten doctor's notes and medical marijuana authorization could go to buy marijuana and marijuana products there. And this was before the dispensary started. Chris, being the pioneer that he is, developed this Zonka bar that patients wanted. They actually checked to see if people had medical marijuana cards or had medical notes from the doctor, because he was trying to do it right at that point. They were absolutely not skulking around the street corner like some backstreet dealer, but they were advertising openly on the internet to medical marijuana patients. Probably lasted for about a year, where thousands of patients were buying at these compassion clubs. But no one was being busted for it, because everyone kind of understood this is the beginning of something that's going to last a while, and medical marijuana is here to stay now. Now in Yavapai County, they have taken this ridiculous, extreme view against the voters, and Sheila Polk, as Yavapai County attorney, is leading that. But I also talked to Jack Fields. He was the chief of the civil division at the time, and he was analyzing the 2010 law, and he, no surprise, because it's Yavapai County, took the view that nothing like this could occur. And so until the state issued actual dispensary licenses to people, no one was supposed to be selling marijuana, and they were going to prosecute anyone that was.
I mean, there was a period of time that I wasn't happy with where the direction they were going in. I was worried about my sister. I was worried about my niece and my nephews and what kind of situations they were getting into. And I understood the logic behind it of wanting to help people. I got that. She would say, well, you just don't understand. You don't understand it. And I would say, well, what's there to understand? It's illegal. Like that. To me, that it was that black and white. Like, what's there to understand about it? They were talking to attorneys, and they thought they were doing the right things, but it still was just on the other side of that track.
What I did wrong was I just shook hands with the wrong person. I trusted a guy who said he was a financial backer and was going to help me get licensed and do everything legitimate. When we first met up, he played on emotion. He acted like he was from Kansas City. He acted like we came from the same background. And, a guy like me coming from where I come from, that means something. If you've kind of got the same background and you understand, then typically you tend not to screw those people over, because of we don't call lawyers kind of mentality that we had back then. As soon as we met, he fell in love with the brand and offered to put us up in our kitchen at 19th and Bell. He paid for it. He came to me with the key and said, here, let's go to work. And it worked out great because my club had been growing so fast at the same time. We just made it our Southside Clubhouse. That heightened the security around the Zonka kitchen. It made perfect sense at the time. I knew the moment that that something was shady, the minute I asked about bringing on my accountant and my attorney. I wanted them to start writing up the paperwork, getting involved with payroll, getting taxes involved, and he kept telling me that he didn't trust them. I don't trust those guys. Let me bring these guys in. I don't trust those guys. Immediately, I don't want to say that I knew I was doing something wrong, but I knew we were in a bad situation. I knew at that moment that we weren't up and up because he didn't want anyone that needed to be involved to help us be up and up involved.
the police sent in undercover cops to some of these compassion clubs, and they tried to buy marijuana. Sometimes they did it with the idea that they were going to test the company or the club to see if they would sell marijuana without having any kind of medical marijuana license. And so then that would be an example of someone doing something wrong. But they also developed medical marijuana cards or notes from the doctors themselves and brought those to clubs to see if they could buy at the Compassion Club. And you weren't supposed to technically be selling marijuana. And so these were, I guess, legitimate busts, but they were clearly going against the spirit of what voters had passed in 2010.
Yeah, so we received an email, and it was an odd email. It was from a patient, supposedly, asking, about our Zonka edible line, but they were very specific in certain ways of asking, like, not just saying, hey, I'd like a candy bar, or how many milligrams are in your candy bar, which would be a normal question from a patient, which to me automatically sounded like it was a police officer. It was somebody else sniffing around for information. Chris saw the email, and immediately he was, nope, red flagged it, that it was not okay. He took it to everybody that was working with Zonka and showed them, this is a cop. This is how they talk. They would ask for just candy bars or flavors. They're very specific. Nobody is that specific when they ask questions. And he showed everybody.
Kids got up, we got dressed, we left for school, and not until I hit Highway 69 did I realize there was something completely weird about the morning. There were at least 12 marked and unmarked sheriff, officer, cars, jurisdiction, everyone, Prescott Valley. And they literally one by one followed suit as we went down the highway.
Chris was like, wow, there's a lot of sheriffs out today, but it didn't really register. And then he turned onto the highway, and I remember him saying, they're off on us.
As we kept going, all I could think of is that these guys have got to pull us over at some point. They've got to do something. What are they gonna do? And we literally drove this entire 8-mile highway from Diamond Valley to Prescott. I'm watching in the rearview mirror as each mile we progressed on the highway, we had a longer parade behind us as we went. The kids were catching on. They didn't know what was happening, but it was so deafening quiet in the car. And just the way Mom and I were responding and acting, you could tell that they didn't know what was wrong, but they knew something was wrong.
Me, I'm completely lost because we have an attorney. I know we're doing this Zonka, but our attorney says it's fine. So that's not even crossing my mind. Not one time. I just keep thinking, why? That, 15 minutes felt like 3 hours. It was just so slow motion, like what's happening?
We had a decision here when we came into town because this is Prescott. If I stay to the left, then that drives me right to the jail, right to downtown Yavapai Prescott Jail. So I didn't want to do that, drive into the mouth of the wolf. All surreal, I guess. It felt like you're on the ride to your own funeral. That's the best way I can put it. You're alive to see that progression. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, busy time, traffic everywhere. This is a really big intersection. And literally I turned right here. Before I know it, an ambulance stopped all traffic and boom, my truck got hit.
There was cops everywhere. And I mean, not regular police officers. They had masks, guns. And all I see is the door. Chris is gone. They're yelling, felony warrants, screaming, felony warrants. And he's gone, and I see the car is in drive, so I just went to put the car in park, and that's when I looked at the kids. So when I put the car in park, they grabbed my hair. Okay. So when they grabbed my hair and pulled me backwards, I looked back at the kids who, when we started the ride, were each in their seatbelts, and there were 3 kids. And when I turned back and looked at them, it was like just one kid. They had all squished together, and all their eyes were just, they were looking at me and they were crying, Mom. A man in a suit, because all I saw was his eyes. He had this huge, like, assault rifle gun, and he went right into the back seat of our car where the kids were. And as he went in, he grabbed my daughter's shoulder and then had that gun, and he full-bodied, like, went in there and was screaming at them, give me your cell phones, give us the cell phones. And I'm behind him, like, these are kids, those are kids. So that's where I learned I had really small arms, and I came right out of the handcuffs. I remember kicking and just trying to, like, those are kids. I kept screaming, they're kids. And they were grabbing my arms and they were screaming, you're gonna get more charges. And still, all I want to know is, where's Chris? What the hell is going on? This guy gets in the car, and he's not in a uniform, and he just puts the car in drive, and he goes to flip it around, and I'm like, who? Get out of my car. I started freaking out and kicking at him because I didn't know, and I don't know, but it's what I did. And I remember him pulling up his shirt trying to show he had a badge, and he drove us in my car back to the police department.
They raided all 5 of our properties, homes, clubhouses, business, and they took $500,000 in asset forfeiture, which we lost before we were ever convicted, much less sentenced. So when I go to county jail after my raid, I'm watching my club fall apart, watching my family struggle. We lost our business. We you know, it's a bad country song. Everything that could happen, happened. I'm looking at 15 very serious felonies. And with priors in this same county, I'm assuming it's going to go real bad.
Chris was charged with not just selling cannabis, but selling a narcotic called cannabis. And that's because under Arizona law, there's this ancient and ridiculous designation that makes concentrates a narcotic, like heroin or something. Been there probably since the 50s or 60s. I traced it back to the 60s when I researched it, and so it's an idea that if marijuana is kind of, or if you extract the resin from marijuana, that makes it somehow like heroin or meth in terms of its potency.
Few different levels. Prison was different this time than the first time because, one, I'm not a kid. I'm not going in as a 19-year-old anymore. This time I'm an OG. I've got an old DOC number. You keep your same DOC number, so I go in now and they're in the 300,000s and I'm a 138869 number. So when this new guy comes in, my job is to introduce myself, make sure he's good, make sure everything's great, make sure he doesn't need anything. And when I walk up and I shake his hand, it's just this feeling of, whoa, good guy, warmth, comfort. And you don't feel that in county jail. That's the last place you look for that stuff.
I sat there and talked with him, and you know, he told me that he had just got arrested and raided, and his wife was arrested and she was in the other part of the jail too. He was really worried about the children, and I think he said they set the bond at like $250,000. And what was worrying about Chris was, you know, what am I going to do? Where are the kids going to go? You know, he was so worried about the kids.
He came up to me and said, I had a dream last night. He was told to write it down, and he brought it to me. He said, after meeting you, Chris, I feel like this dream was for you, and I was supposed to hand this to you. So I took it from him. I sat at the table, kind of off to myself, and I opened it up, and it said prophecy. And I laughed. I literally remember laughing out loud, like, I got a prophet. This is awesome. I've been counting. It took this long to find a prophet. At the top, under prophecy, it said, you will meet a leader of men whose bones are dead. Please rise them from ashes. And he's looking at me like, you know, that's you. And I guess I got chills at that time, which I don't really remember, but he did, and he noticed them. And he said, that's confirmation. That's the Lord confirming our meeting. As I'm reading through the prophecy, we get to the first verse of Isaiah 40:31. He who turns his eyes to God will fly on the wings of eagles. And that one hit me kind of close to home because of being the president of the Desert Eagles. And I knew he didn't know that. So it was really odd that that correlation was there.
All right, let's see, 29, 30, 31. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint.
And you know, Chris's motorcycle club was the Eagles.
Yes. Yeah, that crazy, huh?
And then the second verse was Jeremiah 29:11. The verse didn't really mean anything, but the number, the 11, hit me right away. I was married on 11/11/11. When I played quarterback, that was my first number. So I look at the clock twice a day at 2 times, and it's 11:11 and it's 2:22. And I've never, up to this point, understood it. I just rode with it like I had numbers.
For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Amazing, huh? When I read these, they bring chills to me. And for someone to not know anything about Christ and to read this prophecy, yeah, they probably thought you were crazy. And I know he was unsure, but yet interested.
I walk into my cell and I sit down and I just sit there like, what is happening? Like, right now? Really? Okay, whatever. Well, he walks in and hands me a Bible, and he literally hands it to me and goes, look, I know it's far-fetched, but here's your book. Take it, and if you flip open and point, and it doesn't have any correlation to what we've talked about, beat me up. Throw the book away. Do whatever it is you feel necessary. And the weird part is he had no feeling of animosity, or it wasn't like he was trying to program, or he was like telling me kind of like in surprise, like, I can't believe I'm really telling you this, and why, and you're not punching me, so I'm gonna keep telling you. And then he hands it to me and he walks out. Now I'm stuck. And literally have a standoff where I'm just staring at this book like, why now? I kind of got the shakes a little bit. I open the book again, and it's Jeremiah 29:11. At that point, I throw the book across the room because I got snot bubbles coming out of my face and tears and chills and everything. Like, am I laughing? Am I crying? Am I sneezing? What is happening right now? And that's when Jim comes in. He just says a prayer. He puts his hand on my shoulder and he prays. And I'm standing there like, I'm on Twilight Zone movie right now. I'm in jail getting prayed for by a guy in tongues with snot running down my face over something that I can't explain. That I saw it, I seen it, I know it just happened. Next morning I woke up and I had this draw. I just had this pull in my chest of go grab Jim and learn. Ask Jim what that was all about. And I did. And Jim started to explain numbers, and Jim started to explain synchronicity and all these things that I had questions about. The next day was my bond hearing, so it's a really big day in court. And this whole time, Jim has been telling me, when it's bigger than you, Chris, give it to him. And that's one saying that I got from everything I learned. So that night he comes to me and says, Chris, I prayed for you to go home on your bond hearing. And at this point, I've kind of had enough of the circus. And when he comes in and he makes the comment that he prayed and that God told him that I was going to go home, I lost it. I grabbed him and put him against the wall. And I told him that, I hope you understand who you're messing with. I will smash you. I don't play well with others, especially in a lockdown environment where I feel like you're making me go crazy. So if I go to court and I got a judge tell me that nothing changes and I walk back in here, you're probably gonna want to change cells. And after I put one on him, he looks at me with this look of, I'm just telling you like, don't shoot the messenger. And he didn't even get mad. He didn't get defensive. He didn't put his hands up. The whole experience was just so humbling that immediately I felt like the biggest jerk. And I'm like fixing his shirt and apologizing, like, Jim, I'm so sorry. They shackled me. They walked me to the courthouse across the parking lot, and the whole time I hear Jim in the back of my head, hey, if it gets bigger, give it to him, give it to him, give it to him. And I'm losing it. I'm really feeling like I'm going crazy. So as they walk me into my holding tank, it's holding tank number 11. I walk into the courtroom, my wife's there, the club is there, and it's a pretty overwhelming feeling. The state is arguing with the judge about CPS taking my children. And at that moment, I realized it's a lot bigger than me, and I don't know what to do. I grabbed my belly chains, I looked directly into the lights, and I closed my eyes, and I said, you know what, man, if you're real, now's the time. You got a warrior down here, and if you're real and you show me, I will let everyone know, and I won't change sides. And before I could even finish my prayer, and I said amen, they dropped my bond to 50 grand. Within 2 hours, I was bonded out. I walked back into the jail cell after they lowered my bond, and Jim was standing in the window like, not like I told you so, but like, I can't wait for you to tell me how great that went. And I walked in, and then we're both in tears hugging, like literally.
Yavapai County, it might just be the strictest county of the 15 in Arizona when it comes to cannabis, and especially cannabis extracts. Sheila Polk is in charge of prosecutions in Yavapai County, and the county attorney kind of sets the tone for law enforcement. Counties are, of course, governed and overseen by the state, but they do have some autonomy, and that's because the county attorney is an elected official. And so the people of Yavapai County put Sheila Polk in there. There is a law in Arizona that allows prosecutors to charge extracts differently than regular marijuana. And Sheila Polk has used this law repeatedly over the years since the medical marijuana law was passed in 2010. So that's the really ironic thing about what's happening in Yavapai County is that the dispensaries there sell extracts, and you can go in and buy them and come out of the store with them, but if you get caught by a cop with them, you might just be arrested for a felony.
We got to the point in Prescott where we knew that they were going to win their case via the media. And then if they couldn't do that by some chance, then they were just going to bully us. And the bullying got to the point where my son's PTSD was so bad, we couldn't leave our home.
That police chief lied to his counsel that he didn't do something and got caught in that lie that because he was on tape. So he thought he was above the law, as all of them were. He lost his job. You know, he was gonna get fired, but they gave him the route to, retire out.
I had an old Harley and an old Comet. I put them on Craigslist and I took the money and got us out of Prescott. Even though we moved to Phoenix, I still had court every single 30 days. So we weren't moving away from the court situation. We were just getting away from the hands-on police issue. In essence, we really made more of a problem for us because of the travel, the money, the time. But at least for those 3 weeks of the rest of the month, we could sleep soundly knowing I didn't have to worry about a cop crawling into my yard from Yavapai, putting a GPS on my vehicle.
We were working dead-end jobs, basically. I went back to work, Chris went back to work, and the gentleman he sold the motorcycle to had followed our story that we just started on Facebook, and his father worked in the industry in Phoenix and worked with hemp oil with CBD, which we knew nothing about. So Chris was interested, went and talked to him, came back to me and said, hey, I got the stuff, and he's explaining it. We could do the same thing we did with Zonka, but it's hemp. It's legal. So I agreed again, and because why not? That's what we're good at. And so we looked into the CBD. We read about what it can do, and it did the same thing that medical marijuana was doing, except it wasn't getting people high, and it was absolutely legal. So therefore, that's where we came up with Hempful Farms, and we started our line kind of mimicking our Zonka topical line that was about to come out. But we did it with the hemp we got, and because it was derived from the hemp plant versus a marijuana plant, it had the 0.3 THC, which is legal in all 50 states, and that's how it was made. That's how we went forward with it. People actually made fun of us and said, "Oh, what are you guys doing with hemp? It doesn't even get anybody high," you know. So we had a lot of people talking down on us, telling us he's just reaching because he's going to go to prison, so he's just reaching. And he thought he was fighting for his life. He thought he was looking at 127 years. So his goal was to get the business going so that if and when he had to go, I could keep it going and keep the family okay. We focused on what we needed to do for the future of our kids, because really it's not about us at that point. We know what we're facing, so we had to get it going. And I think Chris really pushed really hard. That's all he thought about. That was his drive, and it worked. It worked.
I hate it. That place is just a representation of evil and crookedness. And it's almost like the mentality of you can't beat them, join them here. You know, the people who don't abide by the rules are the ones that end up filling the jails up, and the ones who do end up working here. So it's this really weird axis of evil going on. Can't stand that place. It's been here a long, long time. Third floor.
Chris probably was targeted because of the town that he was in. The culture there was so very much a good old boy culture, and things were allowed to happen that shouldn't have been. They come together over the same theme, how they can keep their power. And the power thing kind of goes to their head. They put together a group to protect each other as they go along. You know, we're talking about county sheriff, the Prescott police chief, judges, attorneys. They were so distant from Phoenix that nobody paid attention to Yavapai County. So they got away with all kinds of things up there. A lot of them got reelected into situations because people were just afraid to try to knock them out. And not too many people wanted to run against them because of those same situations. When you had to go against that, you were kind of ramming into a brick wall constantly, and you were going to go down.
The night before, we had dinner with the kids and told them he might not come home tomorrow, but we carried on. We did our high-low that we do every night at dinner, and nobody said at dinner that their low was Dad going to court. And I think it was just because we all knew. So we made it the best last meal, I guess. As we're sitting in the courtroom, I just remember everybody coming and saying hi, and we're sitting there waiting. When the judge came and asked everybody to stand up who was there for Mr. Martin, and that entire room stood up, like we turned around and the whole room stood up. I still had, I guess, that hope that they would let him go on house arrest.
The plea was 2 years, and the sentence was handed down pretty quickly. They handed the plea over, which was the first time we ever got to review it, and my response was to ball it up and throw it on the floor. Like, you're crazy. I'm not admitting to anything when I never sold anything to a cop. I never did anything that I thought to be illegal according to the AMMA, so why would I admit it now? The interesting thing with the case is our private investigator is really the saving grace. He dug up so much dirt that had already taken place with the officers involved before my case that it brought up so much question. It brought up so much doubt that my lawyer took it as a sign of retreating when they gave us the 2-year plea. And my lawyer pulled me outside and said, wait. Before you deny this plea, realize they are handing you the white flag. They're throwing in the towel. They're stating that you won. And it would strike me as just a weirdo, but it's hard to feel like a winner when I'm admitting guilt and I'm going to prison, leaving my family. But when he says, the alternative is we go to trial and we fight for you just like you want me to, and the same 14 that indicted you find you guilty, and then you go for 30 and you call my office every day crying because you can't go home, and I don't take the call, and then you're really mad at me because that's real life. So if that's the option and that's what you'd like to do because that's how this system works, then go for it.
He agreed to the plea. She let me and Chris sit over on the side, like where the jury or the inmates sit. And I remember holding his hand and just putting it on his knee. And I remember telling him it was gonna be okay. And that if anybody had to do it, he's the guy for it because he's so strong. And that there's some reason he has to be there. I just tried to reassure that me and the kids will never will be there every day. So they said it was time to go, and we hugged, and I gave him a kiss. And then they took him. When I got outside, I had taken my heels off because I was done. And I remember sitting in the grass outside the courthouse, and I didn't want to leave because that's where Chris was. And I had to go tell the kids that he really couldn't come home.
So at the time, if you would have asked me then if they got what they deserved, I would have said yes. Now, looking back, no, I don't feel that they got what they deserved. They were ahead of their times. They thought they were legal, and the area that they were in is such a huge gray area of the law that it could have gone either way. And with the raid, for them to say that they had been following them for months and then they did it. Why? If you've been following them for months, you knew that they were taking the kids to school. Like, why did you do it in that moment? Why did you have to make the kids involved?
Prison used to be about reform and rehabilitate and get you home. You had a job, you had a key to your own room, you had counseling, you had a counselor, you had contact with your family, you had opportunity, you had ability to realize that prison was the result of a mistake you made. And now you come home and you live your life better. Prison now in that last 20 years has turned into a business. It's not anything to do with reform and rehabilitate. Because as soon as you walk in, the first question you're faced with is, who do you run with? And it's not the shoes you're wearing or the clothes you're wearing. It's what race are you? And what gang or who do you group up with? And it wasn't the prison asking me that. It wasn't the people I lived with. It wasn't even my race. It was the lieutenant on Yuma asking me what race I ran with. So you know right away that the rhetoric is forced from the top down. And then when you walk into your living environment, you're in a Home Depot with 250 men sharing 6 toilets. Nowhere in that setting does that promote healthy environment. I mean, you're instantly judged and committed to this lifestyle that's completely different than what I was used to.
So when Chris was in prison, the way we would communicate, obviously, is through letters every single day. I had already sent in paperwork. I was ready for the visit, and that's when we found out I was denied. You have to wait when you're denied. They make you wait 6 weeks before you can reapply, and then you have to go through the whole reapply thing again, and that's another 4 weeks. So it's just a joke. But every 6 weeks, I was reapplying to see him, and I was being denied every single time. It was just somebody's weird way of making sure they were getting at Chris, at our family, for whatever
Again, that whole small town stuff, it didn't leave. It's still a thorn everywhere we go, some way.
Well, my first nickname in prison was Hollywood, and I got that name because of how much mail I received. It was just one more awesome thing that my wife did to make prison that much easier. Let's see what's in here. Oh, man. Letters from prison. I got a birthday card every day of the month in April. These were hard. These were super hard when we couldn't visit. She would come to see me and drop the kids off and then sit out in the parking lot waving at me. And that only started with 6 months, or with 60 days left. One of the sweetest things in life is having you for my honey. This whole box on this side towards me was from my wife. And everything on this side was everyone else. Very few family members, mainly high school friends or friends from the streets, but my wife really was the key support system. In the first year of prison, you lose everything. Typically, your girl's gone, your house is gone. I mean, it's over. And for her to stick it out through 4 years of court, where we're driving 2 hours round trip just to find out whether I'm going to be home or not, and then prison on top of it, of no physical contact. I mean, we didn't even speak on the phone for the first 4.5 months. It's one letter I got to write from Alhambra, and that was it. I don't know many marriages that could survive that, really. Oh, this is medicine. This is poison. This is what they gave me in prison to fight Crohn's. It's called balasalicide disodium. It was technically an experimental drug. 750 milligrams per cap, and they requested I take 9 of these a day. The first day of taking these capsules, I got violently ill. I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. I was taken to the infirmary and hooked up to a heart monitor and oxygen, and they gave me a water pill and sent me back to my bunk. Told me to have a good night. When I got sick in prison, she started a campaign of phone calls and email and letter writing that is unmatched. I mean, they were getting calls from all over the country, not just the state and county. I had them pulling me out of my bed to take me into the captain's office to strip me down just to take pictures of my ink to try to break me, to try to show me, hey, tell your wife to quit calling me. We had the CO3 and Kingman come in and tell me, do you understand that you're the topic of every briefing every day in this prison? Only because we hold them accountable. If you tell me that we can have visits and there's no reason we shouldn't, then why am I visiting? Why do I not get to see my wife? And if I got to threaten you with a lawyer and bring prison legal news and every other administration into this to get it seen, then that's what we're going to do, because I'm not the only guy this is happening to.
When Chris left for prison, I ended up taking over Hemphill Farms. I moved the business to my house. I had to make all the products at home. I couldn't afford a staff anymore, so it was me and the kids. We would rent a kitchen so that we could still be in compliance using a commercial kitchen. I did all the shipping, ran all the marketing, because I couldn't afford to, like I said, I couldn't afford to pay anybody because Chris was in prison. It wasn't just my job, it was more, one, I love doing what I do, and two, I love my family. And so I believe, because we believe so strongly in what we do, you can do anything. I did not think I could. I thought when Chris left, that was it. I thought I was not going to be able to keep it going. He was the one who knew how to market. He was the face, and I was behind the scenes. So I really thought I was going to lose it, but I did it. And I had the kids, and I had Chris. Although he was in prison, I had him there the whole time. The whole time. Every day, our 15 minutes, it might have been 10 minutes of work talk. And that's just what it had to be. Or all our letters. He would remind me what all the hashtags were I needed to hashtag when I made a post. So he helped me.
You know, there were 2 valuable lessons taught to us from this. My wife was very passive, very in the background. She doesn't want to be on Front Street. She doesn't want to be on camera or in the books or in people's mouths. She doesn't even want her name out there. And me, I'm that, I gotta control and run everything. I can't do it if I don't know what's happening. You go to prison, you lose all that ability. So the 2 lessons we learned was I need to shut up, slow down, realize what I got her for. And she realized how important she is to this business and to this family. We can't do this without her. This chick did everything from pitches to the marijuana show to run the company from $3,000 a month in sales to $100 grand a month in sales by herself, all by herself with a 6-year-old. I mean, what didn't she do? I think that's probably an easier question to answer.
Hi. Want to wear a dinosaur today? Hi.
That one's cute.
Oh, you're such a cute baby. You're such a cute baby.
Can you believe I'm a grandma?
Before 40?
No, I know, that's weird. But I can say that it's way better being a grandma. So my sister is a military wife, so she always told me, you know, Andy, just at the end of the night, if the kids are in bed and they're breathing and you've tucked them in, you have done your job. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. So tell yourself that when you're so sad. And so I told myself that. They're in bed, we're good, you know, of course I'm sad, but I always knew his date, his release date. So I had a special shirt made for Chris that was #unfuckwithable. And I wanted them to see him walk out in that. And our friend, very close friends, he owns a Bentley, a brand new Bentley. And he was like, Chris is not leaving in anything other than the Bentley. So of course, I'm like, of course he is. And I wanted to set a presence to that prison. Like, I don't care who you think you got in there or who you think you're better than, you're not.
The day I was released, I think the prison released a pressure valve that they built. You know, they really picked on us really bad through the whole system, monitoring the phone calls to an extra extent, no visits for 2 years with my family. So I guess the climax that had built up to this release was even bigger than I knew. We had built quite the strong following on the outs, and I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that those cops came and kicked my bed every night at 3 in the morning to welfare check me because they were getting over 100 phone calls a day about my medical and about my welfare. So when I get locked into a cage with 8 other guys that are all being released, I'm the last one to get let out 2 hours later because they're worried of the riot potential on the yard and outside the yard. To me, it was all rhetoric. It was all propaganda built up by the prison to show what a gang member I am and how I control people. And honestly, all I know is walking out of that prison and seeing a family that was tortured and knowing that each step was one step away and one step forward to this and to the future. I don't think I'll ever be able to relive that. I don't think I'll ever be able to touch on those emotions and those feelings. But I can tell you that a fire was lit in there and it will not burn out.
Chris is a big, giant teddy bear. I don't care what he looks like. He may have that scary, deep voice and that huge beard. They had a dream that they knew what needed to be done to help people, and they've pushed through on this no matter what. I mean, the raid didn't stop them. They're gonna keep going. They know what they're doing is right, and they know what they're doing is helping people, and they'll continue to do that, and they'll continue to push for the laws to be behind them.
Chris is ahead of his time, and I just love his story so much with the Zonka bar. Chris is a really great example of the changing attitudes about cannabis in this country. He sold Zonka bars to people that had medical marijuana cards, so he did adhere to the rules in that sense. And then he went to prison for it because he didn't adhere to all the rules. Now he's out of prison and he's selling Zonka bars again, and it's totally legal. Well, except under federal law, that's another issue. But anyway, so you have to admire that sort of tenacity and respect that sort of change in society, where something that could put you in prison for a few years, then you could get out of prison, do the exact same thing, but now it's legal. So that's remarkable.
So when I think about what Chris is doing today, I feel incredibly proud of him. You know, all the things that he's gone through in his life, he's turning those around and putting them into positive things to make a difference for people. So I'm proud of him for standing up for himself and for standing up for other people. I'm also very proud of him for recognizing the importance and the healing powers that he has experienced personally with the hemp products, and how he's teaching other people about that and how they can, you know, improve their health through that. So I'm just really proud of him. He's doing amazing things, and I'm proud to know him and kind of watch where this journey ends up taking him.
Yeah, well, if I could have been that dad to him, I mean, no dad could have been prouder. Honestly, it's just I can't stop smiling about him. He's a good guy. In his heart, he is such a good guy, and that's all he's wanted to do, was to find that road to happiness, and I think he's found it.
The story is more so to inspire people to, if you believe in something, then believe in it. And also that, I mean, on the love side, on the girl side, true love is there. Chris is my everything. And we've gone through a lot. I will stand by that man through anything.
The funniest part, how do you love somebody more today than then? My mom didn't show me that. My dad, my family, the marriages didn't show me that. But my best friend showed me that. And I will never be able to repay that. At the end of the day, all the bullshit aside, and all the negativity and the crookedness and all the evil that people will focus on, at the end of the day, it's really about, you know, the changes that are being made just because of this movement. So just don't give up, don't quit, ever. I've been at that ledge on one toe and never thought I'd be here.
When something bad happens, there's so much better that can come. Just because haters made us famous, or, you know, they hated us and did this awful stuff to our family, we're still here. He's the Chris to my Andy. He's my everything. He's not making the story for himself to be about him. This is for everybody to see that. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what happens to you. In your one life, you can do many things. And you could be in many different kinds of ways of life and turn it around and change it. And it's really to inspire. We just want to help inspire others, that you can really do whatever. Surround yourself with goodness, and that's what you'll get in return.